The conversation ended hours ago, maybe days ago. But somehow, you're still in it. You're driving home, and suddenly you hear their words again. You're standing in the shower, and you think of what you should have said. You're trying to fall asleep, and your mind quietly rebuilds the entire moment. Their tone, your response, the pause afterward, that one sentence you wish you could take back, that other sentence you wish you'd said. And the strangest part is, the other person may not be thinking about it at all. But you are. You're still there. Still answering. Still defending. Still trying to change an ending that already happened. Some conversations end in the room. Others follow you home. And if you've ever wondered why one small interaction can stay alive in your head for days, it may not be because you're overthinking. It may be because something in that conversation never felt finished. Maybe you felt misunderstood. Maybe you stayed quiet when you wanted to speak. Maybe someone crossed a line so subtly you didn't realize it until later. Maybe you smiled, nodded, walked away, and only afterward did your mind say, "Oh wait, what was that?" That's when the replay begins. Your mind goes back looking for the moment you missed, the moment the conversation changed, the moment you lost your footing, the moment you should have noticed what was happening. And because you can't go back, your mind tries to solve it now. So you replay, you rewrite, you rehearse. You imagine a second version where you're calmer, sharper, more confident, where you finally say the perfect thing and the other person finally understands. But that version never comes, because the conversation is over. And still, your body hasn't received the message. This is where Stoicism becomes deeply practical. The Stoics understood that an event can happen once while the mind experiences it 100 times. Marcus Aurelius repeatedly brought himself back to what was actually in front of him, not because the past didn't matter, but because he understood the cost of allowing a finished moment to keep demanding attention. And some of us are paying that cost every day. A 5-minute conversation takes 5 hours of peace. One strange comment follows us through dinner. A tense meeting ends at 4th but continues in our head until midnight. Think about that. The other person spoke once, your mind keeps giving them the microphone. Again, and again, and again. Not because you're weak. Often, it's because you care. You care about being fair. You care about being understood. You care about whether you handled the moment well. You care about what people think. And sometimes, you care so much about getting the interaction right that you refuse to let it end. But there is a difficult truth here. Not every conversation can be completed in your head. You cannot think your way into a different past. You cannot create closure by endlessly rehearsing a better response. And you cannot force someone to understand you inside an imaginary version of a conversation they are no longer having. At some point, reflection becomes repetition. And repetition becomes a quiet form of captivity. You may be sitting in your own home while mentally standing in front of someone from work. You may be with people you love while emotionally answering someone who isn't even there. You may have left the building so a part of you never left the room. That is the real cost. Not just overthinking, absence. The conversation takes you away from the life that is happening now. And calm people eventually learn to notice when this begins. They don't pretend the interaction didn't matter. They don't suppress what they feel. They ask a different question. Not, what should I have said? But, is there anything left for me to do? That question changes the replay. Because sometimes the answer is yes. Maybe you need to clarify something tomorrow. Maybe you need to set a boundary. Maybe you need to apologize. Maybe you need to document what happened. Maybe there is a real action to take. Then take it. But sometimes, the answer is no. There is nothing left to do. Nothing left to solve. Nothing left to say. Only a mind trying to reopen a door because it doesn't like how the room felt when it closed. And that is where Stoic discipline begins. You remind yourself, I have already taken the lesson. I do not need to keep reliving the moment. That distinction matters. Take the lesson. Leave the scene. Maybe the lesson is that you need to speak sooner. Take it. Maybe the lesson is that this person isn't safe to be vulnerable with. Take it. Maybe the lesson is that you were wrong. Take it. Maybe the lesson is that no explanation would have changed what they wanted to believe. Take that too. But once you have the lesson, you don't need to keep carrying the entire conversation. This is especially hard for thoughtful people. Because thoughtful people often believe one more round of analysis will finally create peace, one more replay, one more imaginary response, one more attempt to understand why they said it that way. Peace rarely arrives through perfect analysis. Sometimes peace arrives when you decide the moment has taken enough from you, enough attention, enough sleep, enough of tonight. There is something else you may need to hear. The fact that you didn't respond perfectly doesn't mean you lost. The fact that you thought of the right words later doesn't mean you failed. The fact that someone misunderstood you doesn't mean you must spend the rest of the evening building a better defense. You are allowed to be imperfect in conversations. You are allowed to need time to understand what happened. You are allowed to walk away without the perfect final sentence. That may be one of the quietest forms of emotional strength. Not always knowing exactly what to say, but knowing when the moment is no longer allowed to follow you. So tonight, if that conversation comes back again, don't immediately enter it. Notice it, then ask, is there anything left for me to do? If there is, decide what action you'll take. If there isn't, take the lesson and leave the scene, because the conversation already ended. You don't have to keep giving it new life. If this helped you recognize why certain conversations stay with you, subscribe to the channel and watch the previous video, You Stopped Explaining Yourself, and Everything Changed. Because sometimes the conversation keeps replaying for one reason, you're still trying to find the perfect explanation that would finally make someone understand you. And the previous video is about what changes when you stop.